So grab your coffee and lean in because we're heading back to May 2010, specifically the south shore of Long Island. Picture this super remote, scrubby stretch of land right near Gilgo Beach.
And the wild thing is, the police weren't even looking for a serial killer back then. They were actually just trying to find a young woman named Shannon Gilbert. She'd vanished after making this absolutely terrifying 911 call in the middle of the night, and they were desperate for leads.
Exactly. They were combing through the thick, salty brush along Ocean Parkway, probably just hoping for any sign of her. But then, an officer and his canine stumble upon something way more chilling than they ever expected. Instead of Shannon, they find a set of skeletal remains wrapped in burlap.
And it didn't even stop there. Just a few days later, they find another, then another. Pretty soon, they realize they've walked right into a graveyard hidden in plain sight along this lonely highway.
It's crazy how the search for one missing person flipped the script entirely, turning into one of the biggest, most infamous murder mysteries in U.S. history. We're talking about a decade-long hunt for answers that's only just recently started to unravel.
Man, by the time 2011 rolled around, the scale of this thing was just mind-blowing. It wasn't just a search anymore, it was a massive crime scene. Investigators ended up finding at least 10 or 11 sets of remains scattered along that same stretch of road.
Right. And the heart of the case became known as the Gilgo Four: Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Lynn Costello, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and Megan Waterman. They were all found within a few hundred feet of each other, all wrapped in that same burlap.
The common thread was so specific, too. They were all working as escorts and had advertised on Craigslist. It really showed how this predator was targeting a specific, vulnerable community.
But the mystery went even deeper and got way more complex. They also found the remains of an Asian male in women's clothing, and even a toddler. That part is just devastating to think about.
It really is. It honestly felt like this dark, heavy cloud settled over Long Island as everyone realized a killer had been using their own backyard as a dumping ground for years. It turned a scenic drive into something much more sinister.
So after that initial discovery phase, the case just stalled for over 10 years. It's honestly wild to think about how long everything stayed quiet.
It was so frustrating, especially for the families. There was all this drama behind the scenes. Local police were getting hammered for how they handled evidence and investigative protocols.
And the rumors. You had whispers of corruption at the highest levels of local law enforcement. It made the whole thing feel, I don't know, tainted, like the search was being blocked from the inside.
Definitely. And there was this heartbreaking sense that the case wasn't being taken seriously because of the victims' backgrounds. It's that less dead concept in victimology, where society doesn't push as hard for marginalized people.
It's tragic. For a decade, the killer was just this shadowy boogeyman. Every time a new lead or forensic hit popped up, it eventually just fizzled out.
Exactly. 10 years of families waiting and wondering. It really felt like justice might never happen, and a perpetrator was just going to remain a ghost.
So after years of this case just sitting there, everything finally started to shift in early 2022. A brand new task force was put together, and they did exactly what the investigation needed.
They really did. They looked at the evidence with totally fresh eyes, using forensic data tools and analytical software that weren't even around when the remains were first found back in 2010.
Right. They went back to square one, re-examining witness statements about a dark green Chevrolet Avalanche spotted near one of the victims' houses. It was a lead that had basically just been gathering dust.
And the digital side was massive. They dug into burner phone records, using cell tower location data to map out exactly where those calls were coming from. It's all about finding geographic clusters and analyzing billing metadata.
It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle, you know? The pieces had been in a box for years. Finally, they started seeing how that truck and those phone pings might point toward one specific guy living in Massapequa Park.
It's wild how it all started clicking once they used a new lens. It was the aha moment the families and investigators had been waiting over a decade for.
So let's talk about the guy at the center of all this, Heuermann. On paper, Riley, this guy was just incredibly ordinary, right? He's literally the guy you'd pass on the train platform and never look at twice. A Manhattan architect with his own firm, a husband, a dad of two. He lived in this slightly cluttered, dark red house in suburban Massapequa Park.
Exactly. He did that classic Long Island commute every single day.
just one of thousands of people in suits heading into the Surrey. But man, when the task force finally started trailing him, the details they uncovered were just wild.
It's so chilling. They found out he'd been using burner phones to contact sex workers and was doing some seriously graphic, disturbing searches online. We're talking about things no one should ever be looking at.
It's that classic monster next door scenario, isn't it? We always want to believe these people look like villains, but no. He was allegedly living this pitch-black double life right under everyone's noses, while keeping up the regular suburban dad routine.
It really makes you look at your neighbors a little differently, doesn't it? You think you know someone, and then you find out about the burner phones and the secret life. It's just wild.
Honestly, Riley, the way they actually nailed this guy, it's like something straight out of a forensic thriller. We're talking years of nothing, and then it all comes down to a trash can in Manhattan.
Wait, I've heard about this. Didn't it involve, like, a literal snack?
Exactly. Investigators had been tailing Rex, just watching his every move in the city. One day, he tosses a pizza box into a public bin. They swoop in, grab a discarded crust, and get this, they manage to extract mitochondrial DNA from it.
Shut up. From a half-eaten pepperoni pizza? That's so New York.
Right? And then they compared that profile to a tiny hair that had been stuck on the burlap wrapping one of the victims way back in 2010. It was a match.
That is wild. I mean, forensic science is incredible, but the persistence there is just next level.
Totally. They also used cell tower data to map his movements, placing his burner phones in the exact same areas as the victims. When you layer that DNA over those digital footprints, the walls finally started closing in. It's just wild that a decade-old mystery was solved because of a discarded snack. Honestly, July 2023 was just a total shock to the system. When the news broke that they had actually made an arrest, it absolutely rocked the community. I mean, can you imagine living in a place like Massapequa Park and suddenly your quiet suburban street is swarming with state police and the FBI?
Oh, the neighbors were completely floored. They were coming out of their houses just staring in disbelief. A few people described Rex as a bit of a loner, maybe a little odd or a bit of a grumpy neighbor, but nobody ever imagined he could be linked to something this horrific. He was just the guy next door who took the train to Manhattan for work.
And the search of that house was intense. Investigators spent days hauling out evidence, including this massive collection of hundreds of guns. But the detail that really sent chills down everyone's spine was the discovery of a soundproof room in the basement.
That is just the stuff of nightmares, seriously. But looking at the legal side, Rex has pleaded not guilty to everything. His lawyers are basically leaning into the idea that the evidence is circumstantial.
They've got their work cut out for them, though. The sheer volume of data the prosecution is bringing forward, from cell tower pings to that DNA on the pizza crust, is just staggering. We haven't seen a serial killer case with this much forensic weight in years. It's an absolute mountain of information. So, Riley, where exactly do we stand with all of this right now? It feels like after years of absolute silence, things are finally moving at warp speed.
It really does. The case is very much alive and moving through the courts. Right now, Rex has been charged with the murders of the Gilgo Four. That's Maureen, Melissa, Megan, and Amber. And even a fifth victim, Sandra Castilla. It's wild because for over 13 years, it felt like this mystery was just stuck.
Totally. But now, prosecutors are digging deep, using things like cell site mapping and advanced DNA sequencing to see if he's linked to the other remains found along Ocean Parkway. They're sifting through massive amounts of forensic data to build their case.
It's a long road to a trial, but there's finally a real sense of momentum. It's a reminder that even when a case goes cold, the truth has a way of surfacing. It's finally giving these families a chance to see the person responsible for their pain face a judge.
Definitely. We're all just watching and waiting to see what else the investigation uncovers next.